recovered drug addict. My name's Chris.
Chris.
I'm truly honored to be here, glad to be here. God separated me from drugs and alcohol on March 17th, 2009. And so this is kind of I got sober in Alcoholics Anonymous, so I'm going to do my best here to put myself in this fellowship and share my experience. I'm an absolute drug addict. I have a ton of experience, and I belong just as much in this room as I do in other fellowships, so I'll try to, it's just not a talk I usually give, so let's see here. It's very fitting for me to, when I'm on your guys' side of the room, I can't just jump right into hearing somebody talk about a solution. If I don't buy into what they're talking about, if I don't know about them, if I don't really think they've been where I've been, it's just like a guidance counselor giving a talk about a trip to Morocco or something. You know, it just doesn't translate well, right? So it's probably fitting for me to, give you a little backstory here. I had my first drink, and drugs came right along with it in like the 8th grade sometime. And it did what we're talking about tonight. It was a spiritual experience. This did something for me. This connected me with the group of guys that I always felt like I was a part of and I was friendly with, and I knew these guys since elementary school, but I always felt like there was something in between me and this group of guys that just never would go away. I got loaded for the first time, and man, that stuff just melted away. I could not wait to do this all the time, and immediately, I don't know if I smoked pot first or if I drank first, but immediately right after that, I was willing to try anything. I was just all into, now I'm mixing things and trying. I just loved it, fell in love with it. I'm a research guy. Like if I'm into bikes, I get bike magazines, or cars, I get the car. So now I'm reading High Times. I'm reading about, trips to Colombia maybe. I'm like, I'm into this. I'm all in, and it's doing something for me, man. It's the only thing that is allowing me to feel comfortable, and I realized early on that, man, I feel so good on the weekends doing this stuff that I gotta work this into my daily repertoire here, so immediately I'm smoking pot before school and all this stuff, and I don't know, it was absolutely like a gateway into other stuff for me. I can attest to that. So if it stayed right there and it was still doing what it was doing, I would not be here tonight, I promise you that, right? But this thing is progressive in me, and all of a sudden I'm trying these other things, and I'm getting strung out on opiates, and I'm smoking crack. I'm doing all this stuff that I would have never told you. Like, I started drinking on some Zimas, like I drank this sorriest girl. It's like Sprite, what I was drinking, right? That got me into this experience, and all of a sudden now I'm strung out on all this stuff, and it happens that quick, right? For me, it did. It was, you could, like the first time, I remember I was dope sick for the first time, and I thought I had like the flu. My buddy's like, no, he's like, you're sick right now. I'm like, I know I'm sick, I thought I was just legit sick, and damn it if a couple of those Oxy 80s didn't just knock that sickness right out of me, man. And I felt great, and I don't know, like if it just stayed kind of like right there, and like I wasn't going anywhere in life. I was behind on all my bills, and my parents were always mad at me, and like, but it was all right, it was okay. I could get by, so what, the girl wants to leave, she was using too much of my stuff anyway, screw her, and I can justify this thinking. And honestly, if it was stayed right there, different person up here tonight, I promise you that, right? But this thing progressively got real weird and real crazy, and now I'm like, and by this time I was introduced to these rooms, right? I was first introduced to Alcoholics Anonymous. My dad was sober in AA, he still is, and he brought me to a meeting, and I just really, I got my first big book that night, and I mean, the gift of identification was not there, and it's nothing that these guys did. These guys did what they're supposed to do. They do what we do when we walk into a meeting. They were welcoming. They were nice guys. I don't particularly remember what they talked about, but I knew that I just did not feel like I fit in with these guys. These guys were all much older than me. I really thought I was at this one fellowship only for a drug problem. I did not think I had a drinking problem, and it just, in my experience, when I go about this thing with a head like that, it just doesn't come off well, right? I put about that much effort into it, and because I'm a little bit different than you guys, and when I'm a little bit different, your solution's like kind of cool, but it's probably not going to work for me because I'm a little bit different, and before I know it, I'm loaded again. And the way it always starts for me, which thank God I connected the dots back to my alcoholism, and drug addiction is one and the same. I believe in my case, I don't know that it's like that for everybody, but it would start off, I would get as physically sober as I'm sitting here right now. I would detox. By the end, right, I'm strung out on opiates. I'm smoking crack anytime I get my hands on money. I'm stealing everything that ain't nailed down. And I'm smoking crack and doing opiates, and I cannot put this stuff down. And I would get sober long enough at my parents' house, right? They would come find me on the street somewhere, or I'd be so beat up, I'd be up for days, and I'd go over there, and I'd say, please let me in. And, they'd frisk me, make sure I'm not bringing stuff into their house, and I'd go in that house, and I'd lay there, and I would detox, and I would just be so sick. And the minute I would feel better, I'm talking, I don't know if any opiate withdrawal guys in here, but man, I tell you what, I'd get a sip of Gatorade in me, and then I'd throw up for like 3 days. Something about that, man, when it's coming out of me, it doesn't stop, and I'm dying, right? And in Bill's story, where it talks about the mind and the body are marvelous mechanisms, for mine endured this torture, right? And mine did. I kept putting myself back in this situation. And so I'd sober up, just as sober as I'm sitting here right now. And before I know it, like later that afternoon, like my parents would go to work, right? I am a loser, and I'm at their house sucking up their air conditioning, right, eating little graham crackers because I'm sick and stuff, and I'm rifling through drawers and stuff, like any good son would do, seeing what kind of change is lying around and that kind of stuff. And they'd be out at work, and man, I would get this thing would just hit me, and before I know it, I'd steal some money. I'd walk up to the corner store to get a quart of beer, because I'm not an alcoholic. I'm not a drug addict. Well, I'm certainly a drug addict is really what I'm saying to myself. I'm not an alcoholic. I'd go get a quart of beer, and it would kick this thing off in me. And see, when I'm out there running, I'm not wasting money on beer. I might steal some change out of Mom's Zephyr Hills bottle to go get a quart of beer, but I'm not buying beer, right? I'm doing all this other stuff. And it would kick this thing right off in me, man. And it's like I lost years of my life doing this. That didn't happen one time. That happened 10 times, 12, 15, 20 times. Like I would, with everything in me, you could hook me up to a lie detector and I was done. I was straight up done. See, but what I don't realize is that's what being powerless is. I don't have the power. If I had the power, I would I'm done and knock it off, and you'd have a different speaker, and I'd be, I don't know, at the Elks Club or something. I don't know what regular sober people do, but that wouldn't be what I would just, if I had the power, right? But I don't have the power. Lack of power is my dilemma, as this book's going to talk about here that we're going to read. And so I want to kind of throw that out there. That's kind of what you're working with here. And I would continue, like I didn't try that just one way. I tried many different ways. I tried, well, maybe I always get arrested on Xanax. I can't do that. And I would try this stuff, and then I'd wind up getting arrested on something else. And I'd go back to the drawing board. And all right, we got to cross that, and I'd try all these different concoctions to use and to do it successfully, right? And I haven't been able to do that. And really, I was the last one to find that out, unfortunately. My parents knew this, the state of Florida knew this, Department of Correction, all these people knew this besides me. I was literally the last one to know. So when you got that kind of no power situation, so me finding this out, me coming to believe in this really took place. I got locked up. I got locked up one time for 9 months. And I got out, and I really thought things were going to be different. And within a day of being out, I was just as loaded as I was on all them same things that got me arrested and got me put in there. And I was just as baffled. It talks about, cunning, baffling, and powerful. I was just as baffled. I didn't understand how this happened, right? But I had been introduced to AA long enough prior to that run. So that was like 2008, end of 2008. 2006, I was in this treatment center, and they were talking about the Big Book, and they were talking about the phenomenon of craving, and they were talking about these ideas that would come into my head on these little brief times of dryness, of sobriety. I would get these little glimpses of these idiots in Jacksonville talking about this phenomenon of craving, and I'm like, God, that's exactly what's going on right now, right? But I don't have the power. I can't cut that off. I can't say, I'm glad, that's what that is, I'll go home now, right? It don't work like that for me. So what happens for me is I get arrested usually. I go to detox or I get arrested, and this particular time I got arrested, and God literally, this God that I did not believe in, that's what we're talking about tonight, right? This power that separated me from drugs and alcohol, that I had no relationship, I did not want anything to do with, I did not come here seeking that power. This power separated me from drugs and alcohol, and revolutionary, just turned my life right around on that day, March 16th, right? I get sober March 17th, March 16th, my life gets turned upside down. And thank God for that, really. So the way this went down for me is I wind back up in the county jail, and I wind up with a Big Book, and I wind up with this guy who he was my next door neighbor in A600 in the county jail. Jose has the pleasure of sponsoring him now, right? It's my good buddy Eric. And Eric's well versed in a religious background. He knows different scriptures, and he knows different things. And I, fancy myself as someone that knows the Big Book because I've been to treatment a handful of times. I have no working knowledge of it, right? I'm loaded. We're sharing a jail cell essentially, right? But I have some kind of knowledge, I think, right? And if self-knowledge would fix this thing, it had been fixed a long time ago, right? But it doesn't. I need an experience with this power. And but I know where these lines are in this book, and I know where to quote things, and I remember we read 63 every morning, and I remember some things about this. I'm not an idiot when I get here. I might be kind of like fried out, but not totally, right? So he's telling me about this other stuff, about this religious stuff, right? This power that's pursuing me, that just wants to have a relationship with me. He's telling me about this stuff, and I'm telling him about this stuff. And we're both kind of coming to believe, because it was both kind of the same stuff. Years later, I find out the guys that wrote this stole all that out of the book he was telling me about, right? So it makes perfect sense. But I'm kind of just lining. We're sitting in these jail cells, and we're talking, and I ran into him at the Tahitian down in Holiday. We were smoking crack in the same, I know what this guy's about, right? This is my Ebby almost, right? Neither one of us are honestly really sober at the time, but this is my guy, right? I remember what we were like, and we're kind of doing this. And what I'm referring to is here on page 13, and I promise I'm going to get up in this book a little bit. I know this is a book study, but I like hearing a story to correlate with this. That's what made this come alive. It's what brought... we had a speaker come with us on Monday in the halfway house, and he made an exact point that, when I sat and cracked this book with my sponsor for the first time, right, and if you're new, welcome. If you're new to this deal, absolutely welcome. What happened was he took his experience in this book, and I took my experience, and we kind of put it together, right, and that's what I hope I'm relaying to you here. So I'm going to bounce around a lot. It's not necessary. I'll read the passage if you want to follow along, but on 11, I just mentioned my Ebby, right? This dude Ebby shows up to help this guy Bill that started the original program that all this stuff came from. And it's midway through this book here, down this page, and he says, but my friend sat before me. So his buddy's sober sitting in front of him. He says, but my friend sat before me and made the point-blank declaration that God had done for him what he could not do for himself. His human will had failed. Doctors had pronounced him incurable. Society was about to lock him up. Like myself, he had admitted complete defeat. Then he had in effect been raised from the dead, suddenly taken from the scrap heap to a level of life better than the best he had ever known. Had this power originated in him? Obviously it had not. There had been no more power in him than there was in me at that minute, and that was none at all. It says that floored me. It began to look as though religious people were right after all. Here was something at work in the human heart which had done the impossible. My ideas about miracles were drastically revised, right? Never mind the musty past. Here sat a miracle directly across the table from me. I always thought I'm looking for this bush. I want to see I want to walk out into Green Key to Texas. I want that thing to just part in half. No, it's not that. It's I get to see some hopeless junkie just like me sitting before me telling me that God did something in his life and it would work for me, right? And that was the first real miracle I saw in my life. And then, so this is all going on, and I'm kind of like, I'm buying into this a little. I don't really know what I'm really getting into, but as we were going through this deal on 25, it says, there is a solution. Almost none of us like the self-searching, right, a fourth step, the leveling of our pride and the confession of shortcomings, a fifth step, which the process requires, right? These are requirements we got to meet to work through this deal. Mm-hmm. It says, but we saw that it really worked in others. Again, that coming to believe and seeing something going on in someone else's life, and all of a sudden because I'm so selfish and I'm so self-centered, I don't know that at the time, but I never see anything good happening in my life. Man, it could be, I could get a damn $1 million and it's in the wrong briefcase or something, everything sucks, But when I see Caleb get his damn kid back or something, like, man, this is a cool thing to be a part of, right? So it says, but we saw that it really worked in others, and we had come to believe, right? Before I ever came to believe in any kind of power, I really had to come to believe in this. I had to come to believe in the hopelessness and futility of life as I had been living it. I had to come to believe that every day was the exact same day. There was no more, getting dressed up on a Friday and taking some paycheck and going to Ebor. That was so long gone. That was not even on the radar anymore. It was just about locking myself in someone else's motel room, bathroom, and getting as loaded as I could and getting whacked out of my mind for days on end, right? Putting black tape over the peephole, you don't want to let any, not a ray of light in that room, and just whispering for 3 days straight, this is how, this is me partying at the end, right? This is how free I am at the end, right? And it says on 28, right? This is all looking back. This is a looking back thing for me. I don't see this when I'm in the middle of it. What I'm explaining to you was a miracle in my life. For God to take me out of that life and put these straight up angels in my life that just showed me this power. This was a miracle. But you know what it really was? It was me getting arrested and going to prison. It wasn't, on the outside, it's not looking good, but looking back on all this, this is a miracle. And it says, what seemed at first a flimsy reed had proved to be the loving and powerful hand of God. Right? A new life had been given us, or if you prefer, a design for living that really works. And this was the first time, I always thought AA lived, or DAA, NEA, I thought this stuff lived for the hour from 8 to 9, or from 7 to 8. I thought it was a thing I did once or twice a week, maybe, 3 times if I'm feeling squirrely, and it all happened at that one location for that 1 hour, and that was it. And see what I've come to believe now, what I believe this is a design for living. This is in all areas of my life. There's no area that this thing hasn't touched, right? God is up in my business, my family life, my job, my life with my fellows. Like, this is the center of my life. And so all that leads me up into on 34, where he says, and I told you I was going to be bouncing around, but we're getting somewhere. We're building up on this like absolute hopelessness where why would I even seek this power, right? And really, so the first step is the problem. The second step is the solution. These are both conclusions I can come to in the parking lot. I can look over my own experience and come to these conclusions, literally having a conversation with somebody. So why do we even need this book? Why do I need these 12 steps? the answer could be on a bookmark, right? It could be, the problem is, you're a hopeless junkie getting loaded. The solution is God, right? Here's your big book, right? But see, this is like dummy proof here, and this is a course of action 2 through 12 that I'm going to walk out, and I'm going to have a personal contact with this power. And I don't know that at the time. I just think that these steps don't look like they apply to... I told you I have legal problems. You guys are telling me about came to believe, like, no, I need a lawyer, right? This is not what you guys are missing, what I'm telling you here, right? And so on 34 here, he says, whether a person can quit upon a non-spiritual basis, right? I can't quit on a non-spiritual basis. And how do I know that? Well, it's a conclusion I drew from looking over my shoulder. I can't quit on a non-spiritual basis. How do I know? I look over my shoulder. I tried quitting at my parents' house with no God, no help from any of my fellows, right? White knuckling it. Self-knowledge I tried all these non-spiritual approaches. Didn't work, right? So it says, whether I can quit upon a non-spiritual basis depends upon the extent to which I have already lost the power to choose whether or not I'm going to drink and get loaded and do drugs. And that is my experience. I don't have the choice, right? If I had the choice, I would just be at home choosing not to get loaded, and that would be fine. I'd be, all these years sober, just home choosing. But see, I need a miracle in my life just as much today as I did on March 17, 2009, right? And honestly, maybe more, because I got more to lose today. I had nothing going on in my life at that time. I had nothing. I was living out of a bag, walking up and down 19. I was living in a duplex, a 5-minute walk from here, right here off Lemon, which they were trying to kick me out. I was in all these precarious situations, and man, I could not get it right. And today I got a lot more to lose, right? I cherish this sobriety and this time that I have, because I have so much more to lose. So it says that there was a tremendous urge to cease forever, yet we found it impossible. This is the baffling feature of alcoholism and drug addiction as we know it, this utter inability to leave it alone, no matter how great the necessity or the wish. And that's where I was at. I wanted this so bad toward the end. I really did. In the beginning, I didn't want nothing you guys had. But at the end, man, I wanted it so bad. And it's like I would just I could not get it. I could not stay sober. And this is why, right? And it leads us right into... I'm going to shut up here in a minute, but I just got a couple things I want to read in We Agnostics. On 44, it says that in these preceding chapters, we hope we have made clear the distinction between the addict and the non-addict, right? That there's something different. This book talks about a real alcoholic, a real addict, that not everybody that shows up in these rooms suffers from this thing, right? Some people can just come here, their life's on fire, they put it back together with a little self-knowledge, maybe even some help from Baycare, and they just go back out and have a good life. And that's not my story. I tried that. I came to these rooms and my life got worse. My head got louder. All of a sudden I hated everybody around me. I thought I was a pretty happy-go-lucky guy. All of a sudden I can't stand being around people. And so I am of the thought for myself that I am this real drug addict that it's talking about. And it says if when you honestly want to, you find you cannot quit entirely. And I couldn't quit entirely. Or if when using, you have little control over the amount I take. That I knew that right away. The things I'm putting in me, there's no controlling anything, right? That was an easy one there. It says that you might be an addict then. If that be the case, you may be suffering from an illness which only a spiritual experience is going to conquer. And that's why I'm talking about God. That's why I'm talking about this spiritual experience that revolutionized my life, changed my life 100%, because that's all we got for you, right? Sometimes people will come and say, I'm not into the spiritual stuff here. That's all this is. I'm sorry to tell you, right? I hate to break it to you. It's like the wet part of water, right? That's all we got here. This is all it is, right? So it says to be doomed to this addicted death or to live life on spiritual basis are not always easy alternatives to face. And isn't that true? Why is it that knowing this chaos, this madness that we just came from, that I just came from, knowing that that's right over my shoulder, why is it such a hard decision to come to? Do I want to go back to this crazy lifestyle, or do I want to try what these idiots are talking about, right? These happy, seemingly happy, sober guys talking about whatever. And man, it takes a lot. For me, it took a lot of pain. Alcohol was a great persuader, it says in this chapter, and drugs was a great persuader, right? This thing had to beat me into this reasonableness where I was willing to listen to somebody. And on 45, it says, lack of power, that's my dilemma. I had to find a power by which I could live, right? And it had to be a power greater than myself. Well, obviously. But where and how are we to find this power? Well, that's exactly what this book is about. Its main object, this book's main object, is to enable you, the sufferer, as it says in here, to find a power greater than yourself, which will solve your problem. Right? They didn't mix any words back in the day. This was, and they were getting these kind of results. If you followed their path, rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed this path. When we follow this path, we get the results these guys got. And so it says, I just want to read like two more things and shut it down. So it says, there's a couple, well, maybe three more things. On 46 it says, we found that as soon as we were able to lay aside prejudice, right? Because I don't know how you guys are, but I come in here out of the gutter, straight up out of the gutter. I got a backpack, I got no clothes, I got a phone that's not on, I got a watch that doesn't work, I got, straight up out of the gutter. And then I come in here with an opinion on things about, they're doing this wrong, or this guy doesn't know what he's talking about, It says, as soon as we were able to lay aside that prejudice. That's prejudice. I didn't know it. I was walking in here thinking I knew something. As soon as I was able to lay aside that prejudice and express even a willingness, that's all I had when I walked in here, right? I didn't come in here, I hope in 15 years I could speak at DAA. I just came in here with a willingness not to be feeling that way anymore. And it's the promise here is that we commence to get results, even though it was impossible for any of us to fully define or comprehend that power, which is God. A little further down it says, we found that God does not make too hard of terms with those who seek Him. And right before that it says, when I speak of God, or when we speak of God in these rooms, you don't even need to consider my conception. I didn't need to consider the dude in jail's conception. I don't need to consider my sponsor's conception. It doesn't matter. It says that a God of our own conception, however inadequate, was sufficient to make the approach. And that was my experience. And then the next line here, God doesn't make too hard terms with those who seek Him. It's like this God was just sitting here waiting for me to ask for help, because the moment that I, in my heart, really wanted something different, I started getting results. And I promise you that was a truth for me. On 47 it says, we needed to ask ourselves but one short question. Do I now believe, or am I even willing to believe? Right? You'll be gearing, if you get past this part, then you'll be getting ready to make some amends, and your sponsor says, well, if you're not willing to make that amends right now, pray for the willingness, right? Willingness is big around here. And that's what, sometimes we just have to pray for the willingness to be willing. And that's, do I now believe, or am I even willing to believe? Am I willing to believe that something's working here? Am I willing to believe that you guys obviously have something going on that I don't? I keep winding up here with, 20 less pounds and 3 new felonies every time I come here, right? Less teeth every time I show up here, right? It says, it has been repeatedly proven among us that upon this simple cornerstone, right? Any construction dudes in here, the cornerstone is that first. That's what we're setting down. That's where we're getting level from. Everything's based on that. Upon this simple cornerstone, where the hell did I go? Upon this simple cornerstone, a wonderfully effective spiritual structure can be built, right? The rest of this deal is going to be built on what? On willingness, right? On this cornerstone of willingness. And I'm going to read one more thing, I promise. And it says on 55. So this is gearing us up, right? This is kind of pointing us toward. You may have had a bunch of different stories in here talk about throwing away prejudice, laying aside these old ideas. Why can't I set down this gadget and pick up the next, but I can't do that with my thinking about God. Like these stories it tells us in We Agnostics. And it's all pointing us to this point here where on 55 it says, actually, we're fooling ourselves. Right? So the whole deal with this is it's just trying to get me to look within myself, right? Because it's saying that this is where you're going to find this power. If you do this searching and fearless inventory, right? That's a couple steps up. That's in a few weeks. It says, actually, we were fooling ourselves, for deep down in every man, woman, and child is the fundamental idea of God. It may be obscured by calamity, right? Bad things happen. I can attest to that. I'm sure there's been some people might have had some bad things happen to them in this room. By pomp. Anybody pompous, like to worship other things, right? It says by worship of other things, my bank account, the right vehicle, the girl I got on my arm, the school my kids go to, or some crap. Now that's this new sober stuff, that's a whole different thing now. That's real ego stuff, right? Back in the day, I'm just like, Jordans or something, whatever I think it is, right? Calamity, by pomp, by worship of other things, but in some form or another it is there. That this faith, right? This faith in a power greater than ourselves and miraculous demonstrations of that power in human lives are facts as old as man himself. So it says, we finally saw that some kind of faith in God was as much of our part of a makeup as much as the feeling we have for a friend. Sometimes we had to search fearlessly. That sounds like a searching and fearless moral inventory, right? Sometimes we had to search fearlessly, but he, the capital H, right? It's talking about God, but he was there. He was as much a fact as we were. We found the great reality, more capitalized stuff. We found God deep down within us. In the last analysis, it is only there that he may be found. And for me, it was the last analysis because I tried everything else first, right? It was the last analysis because I put the romantic relationship first. I put the job first. I put the trying to do it on my own. I'm smart. I can do this on my own. I put all these things ahead of what you guys were saying. Hey, just do these steps and trust God. Trust God, clean house, help others, right? So we found the great reality deep down within us, and the last analysis is only there that he may be found. And that pretty much sums it up for me, right? So, like I said, the first step is the problem, the second step is the solution, but it's in my experience, this was meant to be kind of just swiftly walked through. This is not like a stopping point where we're going to then take our binder and go home for a few weeks and not do anything else with it, right? Go ponder what God might want me to do or so. Like, God landed you in a 12-step fellowship. Like, go through these 12 steps, right? So don't just do 2 of them. But that is, I think, enough out of me on the second step. Thank you for letting me share.